Today is a Friday farm report here on Locked On Mets, and we are going to begin going through our top 20 prospects. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I'm joined this week by Jordan Grossman, who comes on for these farm reports to talk about prospects, and we're going to give you our two top 20 lists here over the next couple of weeks. Today, we begin with prospects 20 through 16, the first five from our top 20 list.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another Friday Farm Report. I got my guy Jordan Grossman here. Jordan does social media for us at Locked On Mets on Twitter, and he comes on Fridays to talk about the Mets farm system. And we are finally going through our top 20 Mets prospects. And I talked with Jordan about this near the end of the season. At first, I was planning on coming up with one composite list, his and mine, and us kind of putting our heads together on it. Instead, what I wanted to do when I saw his list and I'd made my list, I want to keep our two lists separate. We'll put them up on social media and stuff. We'll make graphics for that as well. So we're going to go through our two lists so we can kind of talk about why we see some of these prospects differently. The first prospect we're going to talk about, though, at number 20, we have the exact same prospect, which is Eric Orze. We've talked about him a bit before, 5th round pick in 2020. Man, when I was watching videos again, that splitter is so freaking nasty. I see him in a Mets bullpen sooner rather than later. This guy has some really ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, and he made his way through the organization quickly. He played at high A, double A, and triple A this year. Triple A, I think his numbers struggled a little bit, but it wasn't really a big sample size. But in Binghamton, he was just blowing guys away with the splitter, just completely fooling them every single time. I've seen a couple of scouts label that splitter as high as a 70 grade pitch,
Yeah.
which is, for people who don't know the 20-80 grading scale for prospects, it's like 80 is the highest you can go. So 70 is just, it's like an elite mark for one pitch. That pitch is going to carry him to the major leagues. If that pitch is working, he can just use that, 70-80% of the time, and he's going to get a lot of strikeouts.
Yeah, and I was I just was on the Just Baseball show earlier today. And we were talking about my latest article where I was going through the top 5 remaining relievers. The thing about every single free agent reliever right now, that the best ones, all of them, it really comes down to one pitch. And for most of them, it's their slider. So when you're profiling a relief pitcher like Orz, I mean, you don't really need much beyond that one pitch. Like the splitter, like you said, that's going to carry him to the big leagues. That alone is enough. What else does he offer to mix up looks? But again, that's going to be the pitch he's going to get strikeouts with. That's the pitch that's going to get him there. But what else does he have here?
I believe he's got a slider and a changeup as well. Those,
Yeah, yeah.
they work, but it's all about the splitter. The slider's an average pitch, it flashes plus, but it's really the splitter that I think people should be focused on here, because that's his his splitter is up here, and then everything else is like down here. It's just like it's a big gap.
And maybe that is, what he still has to refine at AAA this season. I'm sure they're going to want him to have another couple pitches to be able to mix, just to get some strikes with him. But again, I mean, I would imagine that he's going to throw that splitter like over 50% of the time, right? I mean, that you're just going to just hammer people with those
Easily.
splitters and just try to get ground balls and strikeouts. Look, would you be shocked at all if we see Orz this season?
Not at all. I
Yeah.
think I think if you see him by the All-Star break, you shouldn't be surprised at all. Especially if he goes into Syracuse and, like I said, he refines the slider a little bit. I wanted to apologize. It's a slider and it's just fastball, slider, splitter. That's all he's got. So no changeup. But yeah, if you just the slider works on a little bit, and like the fastball is a decent pitch. So just that splitter is going to carry him, like I said. But just one little tweak here and there for a secondary pitch, and he'll be in the majors sooner than later.
Yeah, and it's great to see a relief prospect like this, because the Mets just haven't had a ton of them recent years. They haven't done a great job developing relievers outside of Drew Smith is really the latest one, and obviously like a Seth Lugo that converted. Let's move to number 19. This is where we have our first difference. And actually, our lists we were 19 out of 20. We were almost the same. You had one prospect I didn't have, I had one prospect you didn't have, and we come to that prospect for you at number 19, which is JT Schwartz, the Mets' fourth round pick this past season. I didn't have him in the top 20 just because he had not great numbers in was it rookie ball, I believe he played.
Yeah.
Yeah, so his numbers weren't great. I would say, in my opinion, he's still, somewhere, between 20 and 30. He's just one of those guys on the fringe for me. But for you, what did you like about Schwartz so much that you wanted to include him in the top 20?
So Schwartz is a really impressive guy when it comes to data. He, I have a stat here from Mason McCrospects Live. Schwartz was one of 6 players in the 2021 draft that had a contact rate above 85% and an average
Wow.
exit velocity over 89. And two of the guys that are included in that group are first rounders Colton Cowser and Trey Sweeney. And then there was a couple of second rounders in there as well. So, the problem with Schwartz is that he's a first baseman DH type. So that's probably why he fell a little bit. If he's a third baseman, if he's a corner outfielder, he's probably a high third, maybe late second round pick. But since he's a first base DH type, he fell a little bit. But the offensive profile is really strong. He doesn't really hit for a ton of power. But like I said, the contact rate is really good. Hits a lot of line drives, gets on base a ton. He got on base he had a 481 on base percentage in uh in 2 seasons with UCLA. So just really impressive numbers there. Hit 377 also. So like the contact rate is really good. I'm really excited about his offensive profile. I think he's gonna, if he even is a DH, like it's like a Mark Vientos kind of thing where he doesn't have the power, but like he's gonna be a really strong hitter.
Yeah, and you can never have, enough hitting. I think also probably did knock him a bit in my mind just when I was trying to feature 20 players in that he is a first baseman. And it's like, I think, like you said, if he was a third baseman, even if he wasn't a good defender, sometimes just being able to play, a position like that almost, puts these prospects into a little bit of higher stature. It almost limits them when you're like a first baseman only type guy. But like you said, the hitting profile is exciting. I'm more just waiting to see what he does this year before I would put him in the top 20, just because there's not a lot of at bats yet to judge him on. This is the time of year where most of us start to give up on our New Year's resolutions. But if you're trying to stick to them this year and you want to eat right, it's very simple to do that with Built Bar, because these are protein bars that taste like candy bars. So you're actually going to enjoy eating them. I know I do. I also love their new puffs, which are the first ever protein infused marshmallows. They're fluffy. They got that great marshmallowy texture, but they're not just a protein bar. They're a treat. They come covered in 100% real chocolate. There's flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. If you go to the Built Bar flavors, you have mint brownie, coconut almond, and new this month, they're brand new white chocolate cookies and cream. So delicious. Again, every single Built Bar comes covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low in calories, they're high in protein. You can replace those candy bars. This is the snack to resort to if you want to stick to those resolutions of eating healthier. If you want to try Built Bar today, go to built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. My 19th prospect is way higher on your board. I'm seeing high when I'm looking at a lot of people's top 20s right now. Everyone is high on Joel Diaz to the point where I feel like I'm wrong here having him at 19. But I mean, look, he's what, 17 years old. The numbers are eye popping. It was like a 0.55 ERA with like, I think he had like 63 strikeouts and 50 some odd innings. And this was, pitching in rookie ball. But man, this stuff, when you watch the video of this kid, this stuff is eye popping. And it's a pitcher that I think we have to be really excited about moving forward here.
Yeah, it's something that really impresses me with him is that he's 17, 18 years old and he already has above average control. That's not
Yeah.
something you can say for a lot of teenagers. The biggest thing with all high school guys who are at that age is, are they going to be able to hone the control at it once they get through the system? He already has very good control for anyone in the organization. He's got some of the best control in there, not just for 17-year-olds. So and he flashes, 96, 97 with the fastball. So he's already getting high velo with that. The slider is impressive. So he's someone I think, aside from Matt Allen, for me, he has the most upside in the organization in terms of pitchers. So he's someone I'm really excited about to see if they decide to give him a run in St. Lucie to start the year. Maybe he goes to extended spring training. I don't know what's going to happen with this lockout, how spring training is going to work
Yeah.
and the minor league season, but he's someone who's definitely going to be stateside this year, and I'm very excited to see what he does.
Yeah, he's definitely a name to watch, and like I said, I mean, if you have some time, look up on Twitter, anywhere else, some highlights. This guy's got some really exciting stuff. Which moves us to our 18th prospects. You have Adam Oller. I had Oller somewhere in the top 15. I think he was actually at 15 for me, so just a little bit higher. But that just for me reflects, he's one of the closest arms to the big leagues right now. We've talked about Oller a bunch. He right now, I mean, if you were to just rank out like the Mets depth chart as an organization when it comes to their starting rotation, I mean, he's within like the top 10 guys going into this season if they don't make any additions. Like he's on that fringe there. We could see him this season.
Easily, yeah. I think he's probably right behind David Peterson
Yeah.
in terms of organizational depth chart for starting pitchers. It's like, it's McGill. He's probably in that sixth spot, and then Peterson at seven and Aller at eight. It's probably how I'd go right now. Like you said, if they don't make any more additions, I expect they will. I don't really think they're done in terms of adding starting pitching. But
Yeah.
yeah, Aller, he was the organizational pitcher of the year in 2021. Had a really impressive season in Binghamton, just striking out a ton of guys. And he's old. I think he's 27. So I had to keep him a little bit lower on my list, just because of the age thing. And prospect rankings is really a lot about upside. And a 27-year-old don't really know how much upside it's going to be. But even if you get a number five starter out of him, that's a really impressive move for the Mets, who got Aller in the Rule 5 draft, the minor league section.
Yeah, and since you mentioned the age, I think it's actually natural to move to your 17 prospect. I had Simon Juan at 18, which you had him at 16, so we'll discuss Juan there. But you have Nick Plummer at 17. I believe I had Plummer at 11. Just baseball had Plummer at 10. We had Aram on last week to talk about him. For you, having him lower, it more just reflects his age, right, as opposed to what you think he could bring to the Mets next season.
Yeah, exactly. It's just he's 25 years old. So I'm not going to say the upside is limited. He could still be a very solid major league outfielder. I just always like going for the guys who are 21, 22, and just knowing that there is upside there, for them to be, long term with the organization, 7, 8, 9 years, and having, yeah, it's something. It's just an age thing. I can't really, guys who are 25 and over. It's hard for me to put them in the top 15 of any organizational prospect rankings.
Which I think is fair. I think for me, um, it's a reflection of the kind of how top heavy this Met system is, and it also is a reflection of I just the more I've watched of Nick Plummer, particularly the changes he made in his swing last season, the way he really did just have such a big breakout or almost even a bounce back. He kind of started off good in his minor league career, then he really tailed off, and then this past season, I mean, just really had a great year. I still am of the belief that I, for some reason, something in my guts tell me that Plummer's going to have a big impact on this team this year. I don't know why. Like for some reason, I still lean Plummer over Lee, even though I have Lee higher on my list. I something just I don't know what it is about Khalil Lee, but something has me thinking that Plummer is the guy that's going to win the fourth outfielder job at some point this season and really hold on to it when he gets there.
Listen, there's definitely a good chance of that. Lee, I think he showed when he came up in May when the Mets had all those injuries that he wasn't really ready. And he might not be ready to start next year. He's still a young guy. I think he's 23. So if you give him another couple months to start the year in Syracuse, it's not the worst thing in the world. But he definitely is going, like you said, he's going to compete with Plummer for that fourth outfielder job, along with maybe Jake Mangum too. Um, but yeah, listen, the bat is really impressive. The swing change that you mentioned was really big for Plummer. He's a huge data and video guy. I read that he's always reviewing video of his swing, just trying to get the proper path, trying to get the right angle. For his, just constantly working on himself. So I really love the work ethic that he has. I think that's a really strong aspect of anyone's game to have. And it's someone who I think, like you said, he's probably going to be getting major league at bats this year, and hopefully he can stick as a fourth outfielder. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and comes with that first round pedigree as well. So I think Nick Plummer is going to get some playing time for sure this year with the Mets. My 17th ranked prospect is Carlos Rincon, who you did not have on your top 20 list. So here's the other prospect that we have different. You had Schwartz, I had Rincon. For me, I mean, look, we talked about Rincon at the end of last season, picked him up in the Billy McKinney trade, 22 home runs, has a lot of pop. I think that he deserves to be considered a top 20 prospect based on the numbers he put up last season. What was it that had you keeping him off of your list?
So for me, it's more of an expectation that I don't think Rincon is going to be with the organization for very long. Just because I don't know
That's
what's
fair.
going to
Yeah.
happen with the Rule 5 draft this year. I know it got canceled because of the lockout, or not really canceled, but postponed. But he wasn't protected by the Mets, so he's available in the Rule 5 draft. I could easily see an organization that has a couple open slots, bringing him in, adding him to the 40 with the power that he has. He's definitely someone who is right outside the top 20 for me. He could have been probably like 21, 22, because he did show really strong power in Binghamton this year when he got brought over from the Dodgers in the Billy McKinney trade. But yeah, like I said, it's really about the roster crunch that I don't expect him to be with the organization for long. So I didn't really seriously consider him for the top 20.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. I think that he's the type of prospect where let's just say early in the season, whoever's, let's just say Cano goes down or whatever, like you have DH at bats available, and Rincon could be the guy in AAA that is just absolutely raking and mashing home runs that could provide a jolt in a lineup for a couple of weeks. I don't. You're right. There is something about his age, his status as a prospect, the fact that you just got him in a deal with Billy McKinney last year, where it's like he's the type of prospect that could move around a bunch before he ultimately finds a home somewhere. But there's certainly upside with Rincon for sure. There might be less football being played, but betonline.net has way more stuff to bet on this playoff season. From scores, totals, player performance props to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022, and it's not just football. BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your number one online wagering destination. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play all your favorite games. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, so I want to hold off on Simon Juan because he is, the crown jewel of this international free agency period. We think we should spend a lot of time talking about what that can mean for the Mets. So I want to go to my 16th ranked prospect, which is Carlos Cortez. You're a little bit higher. I think you had him at 13. For Carlos Cortez, for me, I just I don't necessarily think that the ceiling is too high. He didn't have the best showing in the Arizona Fall League, which was another thing that maybe knocked him down a couple pegs for me. Because yeah, he had a great season in Double A, but he was also 24 in Double A, a little bit of an older prospect in that league. So I kind of feel like maybe the numbers we're just inflated by the fact that he's been around for a while. And again, older in that league, but the numbers were good. And I do think that if you need, that type of utility guy to fill a lot of holes for you, I mean, he does profile like that. Another guy wouldn't be surprised if he had an impact on the Mets this season.
Yeah, like you said, the upside probably isn't huge. I think he's at most like a one, maybe 1.5, 2 WAR kind of utility guy. I don't know if he can be Jeff. I've heard some people make the comparison. I don't really think that's real because he doesn't have the same kind of contact skills. But he's a guy. He's 5'7", but he could hit for a good amount of power. He had a 819 OPS in Binghamton this year. So he definitely surprised some people. He was a second baseman, coming out of college, and then the Mets made him exclusively a left fielder this year. I don't think he played second base at all, which is a little bit of surprise. I don't know. Maybe they're getting ready for that transition because they felt he wasn't a good infielder. I'm not sure. But yeah, he's someone who I think could be a really solid prospect for them. The age is he's 24, so I honestly wanted to put him in the top 10 because I like him, and I think he was probably the second best hitter in the Binghamton lineup last year behind Mark Vientos. But yeah, the age was just it pushed me back a little bit having him at 13th.
Yeah, no, and again, I think that in a farm system like the one the Mets have right now, uh, anyone like Cortez that's getting closer, like that's just a good sign because you want some reinforcements from the farm, and at times it's felt like the best prospects are all kind of far away. Now, the way that Alvarez and Beatty have and even Mauricio have been skyrocketing through the system, that timeline's getting closer, but you need these guys like Carlos Cortez, even like a Jake Mangum, potentially to fill in to get you through a whole season. I mean, we saw, Travis Blankenhorn isn't on either of our lists, but I've seen him on some top 20s. Those type of players can, be really critical in certain stretches of the season when you have guys banged up. I don't know if Cortez will ever be a fixture for the Mets, but he could be a guy like, Eric Campbell, Matt Reynolds, some of these guys that we saw over the years that would have impacts on multiple seasons, even if they never were like that real, cornerstone or even like a fixture, I guess is a better word of the team.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the exact kind of guy I expect him to be, and there's no problem with that. Like you said, every team needs those kind of guys.
Absolutely. On the other end of the spectrum, Simone Juan. Like I said, I had him at 18. You had him at 16. I mean, there's much of a difference there. He's in the top 20 after just getting signed. I mean, what, like 2 weeks ago? The guy is impressive. I mean, you just talk about tools, the size, what he can do on a field. He's also an international free agent, just starting his professional career. So many range of outcomes here, but this was a guy they spent a lot of money to get when it comes to their bonus pool. So, what did you think about the fact they were able to land him and how he could project moving forward?
Yeah, I think landing him is a big deal. Everyone always looks at the MLB.com top international prospect lists as like, how come we can't get the number one or the number two guy? Why does it always have to be 10th or 15th? I think Francisco Alvarez was like number 12 or 13 on the list, and now he's a top 10 prospect in baseball. Fernando Tatis Jr. and Juan Soto were both, in the bottom five of those rankings. So, those lists to me don't really matter. I see people, constantly agonizing about it and just not worth the stress. Juan is a really impressive prospect. This is five tool potential. I know we say that about so many 16-year-olds, but like it's real. It's speed, it's power, it's fielding, it's everything. He's got the whole package. I've read the Ronald Acuna comps, the George Springer comps. They're absolutely there, but it's all up to the Mets development team, and it's up to Juan as well to push himself to see how hard he can work to get to. He's only 16 years old, but it's a lot of work to get from where he's at right now to the major league. So it's all about upside right now, and he has every single bit of it.
One of the things that I've mentioned, I believe it's actually when I was talking about the Mets signing one, is that what's great is that, if the Mets were able to land him 3 years ago, which they probably wouldn't have been able to anyway, who knows what the Wilpons would have shelled out for him. But him getting developed in a Will Pond farm system would have been a lot more difficult than in a Steve Cohen farm system, which is just pouring with resources. And that's going to trickle down to every single level. They are already implementing technology everywhere. These guys are going to be able to track their progress season over season. They're going to have more coaches on staff. Something as simple as that, right? Like just be, hiring more people, more staff to take care of these prospects even too. It's just all of that stuff to me. It lessens that margin for error with the prospect when you're giving them all the tools to succeed. Then it's up to the player, and that's still really hard. It's really hard to be good at baseball, but you're eliminating some of these other factors that I think could have hurt other Mets prospects in the past.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Player development is such a huge part of it, and it's something the Mets have emphasized since Steve Cohen took over. I also want to shout them out. Grace Alcoin, who was a softball
Mhm.
player at the University of Texas, the first female coaching hire in the Mets organization. So that was really, really cool to see. Hopefully, she can have a long career in baseball. But yeah, the Mets are bringing in a lot of smart minds to lower levels of the organization, and it'll help guys like Simon Juan and every prospect that we're going to mention in this top 20. Player development is really something critical for them.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. I think One of the things that doesn't get talked about enough with the Dodgers, we always talk about East Coast Dodgers and all that, but when it comes to their success, it hasn't just been about spending money in free agency or making key trades. It's the fact that they just churn out so many talented prospects that they're able to make those trades, that they're able to have these guys fill in and help them get through a season. So I think that's huge for the Mets moving forward. But that's going to be this week's Farm Report. I'm still going to have Jordan here with me. We're about to record next week's Farm Report as we'll go through 15 through 11 as we work our way through our top 20 list. Thank you, as always, Jordan, for joining me. You can follow him on Twitter at MetsFanSense02. You can follow his work over at Locked On Mets on Twitter. And also, you can find his Facebook page, We Are Mets Believers. As always, thank you, Jordan, for joining me. That's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Next week, Jordan will be back as we will go from 15 through 11 as we get closer and closer to the top 10 prospects in the Mets system, according to this show here, Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, a handicapping expert, Lee Sterling. Get your daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day by following Locked On Bets wherever you get podcasts.